A reading from Redemption Rift by Jason Schmetzer. Read by The Dapper Bard. Hack stood near the entryway of the cave. The path was lined with luminescent posts that glowed with soft light. Little caps on the lights reflected the light down so that the illumination came from the floor. The path was white gravel, and it didn't look like anyone had ever walked on it. Ishihara stepped up behind him. "There is no guard. I've been here many times." Hack gestured. "It looks untouched." Ishihara's crooked smile came back. "There is a caretaker. He has a rake." She stepped onto the path, gravel crunching beneath her boots. Hack followed, trying to step where she did. It felt wrong to mess up the symmetry of the rocks. After the first turn, they came to a row of white tablets. Hack looked at the first one. It was carved with hiragana script and a date, 29 April 3028. He looked at the next one, 14 May 3028. "What did they say?" he asked. "The script is names," Ishihara said. "Here, look at this one." The lettering was in English. Hack leaned over, peering in the low light. Sharon Griffith, 15 May 3028. Hack looked up at Ishihara. "Why is it in English when the others aren't?" "Because that stone is for a dragoon," she replied. Hack straightened. He looked back at Griffith's marker, then at the next one down the line. It was in hiragana. The next one was in English. Merahan Jezurabi, 2 May 3028. He started walking, eyes counting. He walked past Ishihara and kept going until he went 10 stones without seeing one in English. He turned around, found Ishihara waiting where he'd left her. "All of them?" he asked. Ishihara nodded. "Every dragoon who died. Those we could identify has a monument in the cave. They are interspersed with the Ryukin stones, because the man who carved them saw no distinction in the honor to be given both forces." She stepped forward and pointed towards the stones. "That man who did this spent 20 years working on these stones. At the end, he killed himself for disobeying the warlord's order that the dead were to be ignored." Unity. Kincaid looked up and down the chamber, and at the woman who shared it with him. "Thank you for showing me this," he whispered. He never imagined it could be like this. The histories said there was a cave of monuments on Misery, but they didn't record what was inside. He'd expected statues or something, pieces of broken mechs, meant to symbolize the fallen Ryukin. He never dreamed that the dragoons were remembered as well, and as equals. "You are welcome," Ishihara said. "I meant it." He walked up and took her hand. "Thank you, Tori." I chose to read Redemption Rift because of my work on the series of Wolf's Dragoon's BattleTech faction briefings. The novel originally was a 4-part entry in the Battlecore series of online stories, and unfortunately, you can tell. The book is not without its flaws, but there are some good points that make Redemption Rift worth the read. The story follows the Wolf's Dragoons as they take a contract with the Draconis Combine and battle in the Reach region of disputed space between the Combine and the Federated Suns. The second half of the novel focuses on the campaign to invade Glenmora. The biggest issue with the story is pacing. It begins quickly, then slows down before ramping up again in the second half, with a conclusion that feels rushed but somewhat satisfying. On the positive side, you do have some good fights, especially in the second half. The battles are brutal and well written, with some great introspection from the point of view characters as they try to survive the onslaught. The story also takes time to show the incompetence of the Federated Suns during the Dark Age, and how the few skilled military leaders struggle with supply issues and other problems caused by Caleb Davian. It makes you feel sorry for those dirty Fed rats. Davian soldiers. Finally, the main characters are decently fleshed out, and you feel for them, especially as plans start to fall apart, and their friends die. Overall, the book is well written, but there are some flaws that I would like to warn you about before you jump into Redemption Rift. On the negative side, we have far too much military lingo that lacks an interpretation for those who do not understand military terms. I've been reading military fiction since high school, so I do know the majority of these military terms. But nothing will take you out of a story like having to look up what the military lingo means when reading through a military story. Any competent writer can solve this problem easily and explain the term in one sentence. Tom Clancy did this all the time in his novels, and it made them easy for non-military aficionados to approach and enjoy. Second, there are subplots that don't really go anywhere and feel like they were added just to reach page count. There is a conspiracy that adds up to nothing, and a romance subplot that goes nowhere, like most romance stories within the BattleTech universe. It would have been nice if either of these subplots had really built into something bigger, instead of being hastily resolved by the 2/3 mark of the book. As I mentioned before, the pacing is rough, and makes the first half of the book a drag to get through. This is due to the fact that the interpersonal drama and the subplots take up way too much time during this section, and while it does allow us to get to know some of the characters better, it can also be quite boring as it feels like no real progress is being made in those areas. However, I will say that the second half of the book does make up for the majority of the flaws in the first half of the novel. That being said, it would have been nice if the rest of the book had consistent pacing and storytelling. The story is mostly told from 3 main perspectives. However, there are plenty of moments when the point of view goes to some of the minor characters. Hack Kincaid is our primary point of view character as he tries to lead the Spider's Web and deals with his mixed feelings about the Draconis Combine, as well as his worries about the war. His story made me really like this character and want to read more of his adventures. Then we have Nate Castle, the character with the most growth in the story. He has major ups and downs, making him very relatable. You want to see him succeed, and his struggles and choices are very compelling. In many ways, Castle feels like the typical BattleTech everyman protagonist who is dealing with overwhelming problems while trying to keep his friends and allies alive. Finally, we have McShane. He doesn't get much focus, but he is our primary insight into the Davian strategy, or lack thereof. He faces the Dragoons early on in the story, and is defeated, leading him to push forward onto new battlefields to avenge his troops. Like Castle, he faces hardship, and it makes him a more compelling character, especially as he faces off with the significantly more skilled Wolf's Dragoons. The side characters are fine, but they are mostly there to support our leads. First, we have Tori Ishihara. Frankly, I find Tori Ishihara to be a boring character. We're told she's a great leader and a good tactician, yet we never really see it in the book. For the most part, she's just kind of there to talk with Hack Kincaid, or to be upset about the conspiracy occurring under her nose. Nina Slade is Hack Kincaid's bodyguard. She also really lacks in the personality department, but her aggressive mentality, mixed with her actions on the battlefield later in the book, make her a very memorable character. Finally, we have Aegon. He is a tank commander for the Wolf's Dragoons. He gives us a really interesting perspective as he has to face off with battle mechs and lead his troops into what is likely their deaths. He's definitely a character I would love to see more of. He provides an interesting point of view and generally has a little bit of snark, which helps set him apart from some of the other soldiers in the Wolf's Dragoons. The characters are one of the strongest aspects of the book, and it is nice to see characterization when many BattleTech novels will just have people be one note because they just want to get to the fights, or they just want to explore unnecessarily complicated political dramas. The flaws don't ruin the book, but they do hold it back from being one of the better entries in the franchise. While far from the worst on the list, Redemption Rift falls into the mid category of BattleTech novels. There is some good writing here, but the first half is not fun, and the subplots slow the book down far too much, and lack the kind of impact you would want them to have on the story, which makes them nearly pointless. On the good side, we do have some likable characters who help push the reader into continuing the story. Overall, this is still one of the better books from the Dark Age era that I have read. Sadly, it is difficult to give this book a high recommendation due to the sheer amount of flaws. If you like the Wolf's Dragoons, or want to know more about the Combine invasion of the Federated Suns in the late 3130s, then this is a fairly good read. If you're looking for a fast-paced, non-stop action story, or a methodical, well-handled political drama or mystery, then you're going to have to go for a different novel. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has given you some insight into another BattleTech novel. If you have read Redemption Rift, please let me know in the comments what you thought of the book. If you want me to do more dramatic readings and/or book reviews, please let me know in the comments. Until next time, please look forward to more BattleTech faction briefings, and until then, I'll see you at the tavern.